Hello from Gardening at Douentza here in Ireland, and today I am going to divide some bearded irises. Now, I made a video about how to grow bearded irises some time ago, and a lot of people asked for a video on how to divide them. It's July, it's the middle of July, it's a perfect time to do it, so let's divide those irises. Here in the border I have a beautiful black bearded iris called Superstition, and it's a real stunner, but it didn't flower for me this year, and the reason it didn't flower is that it needs dividing, so that's what we're going to do. Now, as you can see, these rhizomes are a bit congested and they're a bit overhung by other plants, and the general advice is that about every 3 years you need to divide irises. And this one hasn't been done that frequently, so we're going to do it today. So with a fork and a little bit back from the rhizomes, what I'm going to do is just put the fork in and loosen the iris all the way around. Now, this isn't difficult on my soil, and irises generally, they should be quite near the surface of the soil, so it's not like you have to dig deep to get them out. But it's a bit tricky here because, as you can see, there are lots of other plants that have kind of overshadowed the iris, and this is a job that really needs doing in summer after the plants have finished flowering. So you can't do it in winter or in spring when it's very easy to see what's going on. You have to do it when it's nice and warm, otherwise the irises won't do well. Now look at that, see how it's lifting there? I'm just going to go around the back a bit and make sure I've loosened it there. Okay, let's see if I can maneuver around behind the iris without breaking this Santolina, or the dahlias, or the lilies. So much damage to be done. Okay, and this iris actually extends quite a bit back. The thing with a job like this is to just take your time. Don't be in a rush. If you're in a rush, you're going to break things. You're going to regret it later. So just maneuver a little bit at a time. Now I think I'm now in a position, without having broken the dahlia, to lift this section of the iris. Okay, now I heard a little bit of crunching of roots, but not too much, so that's fine. Now this bit is out, but we still have it attached around the back. This bit here is also out, or nearly out. Okay. Okay, I need to try and move things a bit, loosen things a bit at the back. we can lift out at this stage. Okay, yeah. Woohoo! Okay, right, so now we need to divide up this beauty, and I guess the first thing is to see where it wants to divide. Okay, so the next job is to wiggle things and see where the iris wants to divide. And as you can see, we've got fresh green leaves and we've got a relatively fresh rhizome, and that extends into an old withered rhizome further down the back. So here we go. This wants to divide here. Now, if we can see this old piece of the rhizome here, this is very old and it doesn't have any leaves. So what we're actually going to do is just snip. Nice clean cut. And here then is my first iris division. Okay, so we have a rhizome, we have healthy roots, and we have green leaves. And the next thing I'm going to do is to cut the green leaves. And this will be useful when I replant them, because they won't be too heavy that the wind might rock the plant and stop the roots from establishing. Okay, so there we go with my first division. Nice rhizome with roots, leaves, and a rhizome-y bit. Okay, now we're moving on to the next section. Now all of this, as we said, is just old rhizome, and I'm actually just gonna cut it off and discard. And now I'm going to wiggle this and see where this section here wants to separate. And we have rhizomes that are growing on top of other rhizomes. Now, here I am going to cut here, because I think that these two pieces want to divide, so snip there. And now we have a rhizome piece with, it's got one little growth there and one big one here. And actually what I might do is I'll just snip here. So I think this is big enough to replant. So I'll just take the leaves off, and it helps if you have a sharp secateurs. There's one piece, and then the other piece, again with the leaves. And there's my third piece. Okay, so what next? We have some big boys here. Alright, so you can see here is the old section of the rhizome that's not doing much. We have new rhizome here and there's green leaves here. So I'm actually going to snip this here. Now you don't have to be scared about the open cuts. As long as you get a clean cut with the sharp secateurs, the plant will sort itself out. I mean, these are tough plants that do well outdoors in the garden. They don't mind if they lose a little bit here and there. They're able to deal with it. Okay, so there's my next piece. We put over there and discard the leaves. And here, now, there's a piece that I'm going to remove here. And do you see this old rhizome here? There aren't even any viable roots on it. These are old desiccated roots, so it's not doing much for the plant at all. Okay, so this is my next piece. I'm cutting the leaves, for the purposes of replanting and avoiding windrock. Another beauty. And hopefully all of these pieces, individual pieces, will flower again next year. That's the hope anyway. It should do. Okay, so this one, look at that. Okay, so this actually broke. And that's not such a clean cut, so I'm just going to snip it like that. The rhizome, it's a bit small, but I think it'll be okay. Now some irises have smaller rhizomes than others. I divided another one of mine a few days ago, and the resultant rhizomes are much, much smaller, but this one's a bit of an old brute. Okay, so here we go. And look what's happening here. We have a lot of the old rhizome attached to this poor last fan, and I'm going to cut it here. Okay. So here we have roots, and here we are removing leaves. And there's a nice division I'm going to replant. So this whole piece of old rhizome is going to be discarded. Just put the earth back into the border. And this is for the compost. So from what was originally just one iris, I now have 13. 13 and a little one. Now I'm going to decide where I'm going to replant these irises, just laying them in their position to start with. And of course I am choosing the healthiest and the meatiest and the best. And we're going to have a super display next year. Wait and see. So I'm going to start off by planting this one, and we will need a bit of a hole, which I will excavate here. And obviously it's going to be a sausage shaped hole given the kind of like shape of the plant. Removing any rocks that are going to be underneath. And just positioning it like this. Now, if you have clay soil, you're going to struggle to grow irises, bearded irises. But the main thing when replanting them is to plant them that they're quite near the surface. However, if you've got well-drained soil, sandy, gritty soil like me, you can get away with burying your irises. And what happens then is that after a little while, they will move to the surface and the rhizomes will bake in the sun, which is what they're supposed to do in the first place. So I'm burying like that, which is too deep really for an iris, but it will work its way to the surface and it'll be grand. And of course, the deeper you actually bury your rhizomes, the more stable they are to start with. So it's just, you know, if you have it very near the surface, you're relying totally on the roots to anchor it, and they might have difficulty doing that. So it's nice if you can actually bury it a bit, and that's what we're doing here. Okay. Now, as you see, I don't bother with potting compost at all when I replant irises. They don't need it. Really don't need it. Okay, so just firm reasonably well down, especially if you have clay soil and you're planting these very near the surface, because you don't want them to come out. And that brings me to the end of this video. So water your irises in really well, and then what you need to do is keep an eye on them, especially in times of drought. And this is something you'll do with any, I'm getting wet here, with anything that you divide in the same year. You need to keep it well watered, but especially something that you divide in midsummer like this, you do have to keep them well watered, even though, you know, it's a plant that is drought tolerant normally. Okay, right, so that was my video on dividing irises, which I hope you found useful. I am getting very wet here, so I am going to wrap up now, and I will see you on the next video. Bye!